Hello. How are you? Thanks, Will. I'm good too. Thanks for asking. So you're here for the Getting Started with Google History talk. I hope that you are. If you're not and you just wandered in here, well, good. I think you'll have fun too. I'm Timothy Jordan. I'm going to be your developer advocate for the next hour, and I can be afterwards too. Join me online on Google+. You can get there by going to timothyjordan.com/plus. So let's just dive right in. One of my favorite features on Google+ is instant upload. It's cool because I just take photos on my phone. They're automatically uploaded in the background. But then when I get to Google+, I can look at my photos and I can choose when to share them and with who. And this distinction is pretty cool. And I think really important is that I don't just share everything. I get a private space for all of my photos. And I can go back and look at them whenever I want to. But the ones that I do want to share, I share out with circles. And that's where Google History comes in. Think about Google History as sort of an instant upload, but for almost everything else. Activities that users take on your websites can be pushed into a private space on Google+, called Google+ History, and then they can optionally share them out whenever they want. And at the end of the day, it really comes down to this, is your content in more places. Now let's take a look at this in an actual product. We've been playing around with this for a while, and our friends at Lastfm decided to play along with us, which is pretty fun. Now, if you're not familiar with Lastfm, they're really great at helping you keep a record of everything you listen to, wherever you listen to it, and they call this scrobbling. And then based on your taste, they recommend music and concerts. And it's a lot of fun just listening to Lastfm, and because of this sort of saving of your taste, we think it's a really good pairing for Google+ History. So together we whipped up this demo, which is, well, I'll take you through it. So I'm at this page, and you can tell that it's a test page, an example page, if you will, because we are in early developer preview. But there's a sign-in button right there. I'm going to click on this sign-in button, and I get a permissions dialog. Now, the user, when they grant access, are granting access to their Google+ ID and the ability for Lastfm to save activity to their Google+ history. So I'll go ahead and click Connect here. And there we go. I've now connected my Lastfm account with my Google+ account. I'm going to take a jaunt over here to the radio and listen to a track. Now, my friend Ade, who's just over there in the hat, was telling me about this band. I think I'll check them out. Stereo 360. Let's turn this down a little bit. We'll listen to that in the background while we keep going, shall we? Now, I'm listening to a radio station as I do on Lastfm all the time. The one difference here is that in the background, Lastfm is communicating to Google, writing moments about what I listen to. Let's actually take a look at that in Google+ History. So this is my History tab. This is, again, an early developer preview. This is the developer UI. So you're going to see moments there, and you'll have the ability to share them to make sure that this whole flow is working for you. I'm going to reload the page, and you see right there at the top is the Lastfm moment. It's a demo. It works. That's cool. So in that moment, let me just point out a couple things. You see the album art right there at the top, and then on the bottom you see Lastfm's logo, and you see a link to the song on Lastfm. Let's open that in a new tab so you can see what that looks like. This is the song page on Lastfm, linked right from your moment. So this is the area where the user can go back and look at all the things that they've been listening to. I'll go ahead and stop the song at this point. They can look at all the things that they've been listening to in the past day, week, month, for as long as they've had their account connected. That's really neat, right? The next step they can take is to share this out with their friends. And they get to do this with the power of circles, which means I can share this with my friend Ade, and if I want, no one else. Or I can share it with public, or I can share it with my music friends. Click share there. And let's take a look at that post on my profile. And you can see, again, we have the album art. We have the link back to the song. We also have attribution listened to on Lastfm. So that's Google Plus history. Now I want to take you through in this session, step by step, how to do this on your website. And I think you'll find that it's really straightforward. We're going to first look at how to set up your application. You're going to tell Google that you want to develop for Google Plus history. The next step is to authorize your user. And that's when we saw that permissions dialog pop up and the user said yes. And then finally, write moments. And these are technologies that you're almost certainly already familiar with. First off, who's heard about the API console while you've been at Google I/O? Yeah? We use this for all of our APIs. You register your application there, and you add API services to it. Who's used OAuth 2? Great. Essentially everyone. And who's used a RESTful API? There you go. So let's set up this application. There's just a few steps. First off, you sign up for the developer preview. Now again, this is an early developer preview. It's meant for developers only. It's not ready for your end users. But it is the right time to test it on your application and give us feedback. Next, you enable the History API. So you're going to create an application in the API's console. And you're going to go to the Services tab and turn on both the Google Plus API and the Google Plus History API. And then finally, you're going to create an OAuth 2 client ID, and that's what we use in our application. So to sign up for the developer preview, head over to this URL. It's our developer site /plus/history/preview. Enter in your email that's associated with a Google account. Now, when you use this Google account to create an application in the API's console, you'll have the ability to turn on the History API. And when you use this same account in Google+, you'll be able to see the developer UI we have there. If additional developers on your team need access and need to test, they need to sign up their accounts as well. As long as they're logged in, everything will work. Then we're going to enable the Google History API. And finally, create an OAuth 2 client ID. And this is so easy. I'm just going to do it right now. So here I am in the API's console. And I'm going to create a new project. In this case, I'm going to call it, I don't know. Hi, Mom. Hi. And we're going to scroll all the way down till we see Google+. Right there, we're going to enable Google Plus API and the Google Plus History API. Now, this is not the first time I've turned on these services. If it was, I'd be presented with some API terms of service, quickly read through, make sure that I was going to comply with all of those and agree to them. Okay, so we've created the application. We've turned on these services. The next step is to create an OAuth 2 client ID. So we click over to API Access, and you'll notice this really big button that says exactly what I did. When we click on that, we're going to name this product. Hi, Mom. She's going to be so happy. Click on Next. It's going to make a web application, and I'm going to put in my URL here, right? And this is just going to make it easier if I use the right URL here. My URL is example.com. Yours is probably going to be different. And we select the right protocol, HTTPS, which I'd recommend, or the insecure version if you need to. We're going to create this client ID. A couple things to note about this. So we have this client ID right there. And we have an email address and a client secret. That's great. We also have the redirect URIs and the JavaScript origins. Let's fill those out. Now, if we were using the server-side flow, which I'll talk more about, you'll need to put in your redirect URI. And that's where Google is going to redirect the user flow right after they agree to those permissions in that permissions dialog box. You put in all the possible redirect URIs that you might use, and then you're going to specify that in your application as well. Google will do a match. If it doesn't match, it's not going to work. And then the JavaScript origin. Right? And this is especially important if you're going to use authentication through JavaScript, or you're going to use our sign-in button, which is, again, with JavaScript. The JavaScript origin needs to be two things. One, your domain, including the right protocol and port. Yeah? So it matters if it's HTTPS versus HTTP, and, of course, the port. It's probably going to be 80 unless you're testing on a staging server. It needs to be that particular port. Also, you're going to add a special origin for the button, right? And this is just early in the testing period, and I'll talk more about the button in a little bit. So let's assume that I added those, and then we use this client ID. And I'll tell you where to do that. All right, that's setting up our application, and the next step is to authorize the user. I'm at a flow chart. So we start out by initiating the OAuth flow. Now, we've done this, if you've worked with OAuth 2, lots of times before in lots of ways, but I'm going to show you a really easy way to do it. Then we get the permissions dialog. Right? That's on the user. They just say yes. Then we have either a client-side or a server-side flow. I'm going to talk about each, and then we're done. So for initiating the OAuth flow, we put together this little button, right? Just a real quick question. Again, who's used OAuth 2? Let me see those hands and just leave them up. Now, put them down if you've never had a problem with OAuth. Who's lying? Okay, put them down. Right, we're always looking for ways to make OAuth easier to use, and one of the most difficult things is just starting the flow. Right? And we have client libraries that make this really easy for you. But we thought we'd put together a button, too. And it has a couple advantages. One, all you have to do is add some attributes, and you got the button to initiate the OAuth flow on your page, right? And configured properly. The other thing is that it's going to look common. So people who see this will recognize this button. It's just like the +1 button. You all use the +1 button itself, because whenever a user lands on your page, they know exactly what it is and what it's going to do for them. Now, adding the button to your page is really similar to using the +1 button. You include the script at the top, right? This is the same script for the +1 button. And then you add one of these tags. Now, I'm showing a sample configuration for both the client-side and the server-side flow. The client-side flow just has a couple fewer attributes. For example, it doesn't have the redirect URI or the state. Both those are required for the server-side flow, but not for client-side. Let's go through those attributes. First off, we have action, right? And this just specifies what the button's going to be. It's easy. It has to be connect. Add action equals connect, and you'll get this particular button. The client ID, we saw that when we set up our application. Copy and paste that in here. The redirect URI. If you're using the server-side flow, this is where you want the users to go after they consent. You're just going to do a couple quick things. The user will likely not even see the page fully render before it redirects back to your application. The state. Now, this is for your own verification, and it's an important security step. When you're doing the server-side flow, you're going to set a state variable. Doesn't matter what it is, as long as it's unique and non-guessable. You set that state variable at the beginning, and you check it later. If it's the same, you're good. If it's not the same, somebody's trying to attack you, and that will be bad. The callback. This button has a callback. So when the user gets back to the page and everything's done, you can call a function on that page. And this is where you're going to hide the button, show other elements, pat them on the back, that kind of thing. And then scope. By default, this button will use the plus.me scope. Now that will give you access to the user's Google Plus ID. you need an additional scope, which is the plus.moments.write scope, to actually write moments into the history API. Okay, so that's initiating the OAuth flow. Permissions dialog, again, looks like this. And now we've got client-side and server-side flows. Let's start with the client-side. It's really easy. Yeah? The client-side flow will give you an access token that'll last for 60 minutes. It's non-renewable, right? So you cannot refresh this token. So you have access to the user to write moments while the user's on your website. Now, once the user's gone through the flow, it'll call the callback that you specified on the button. And you want to use this to both hide the button so they don't click it again and go through again, right? You want to give them feedback that they're done, and handle any error messages. Now, I go through in detail error messages in the advanced section that's at the end of the day. I hope you can come to that as well. Just a preview of that is the one that you really want to make sure to handle is if the user doesn't give you authorization. Right? If they don't authorize, you're going to want to handle that in a special way, like ask them why, or tell them to try again, or explain what you're trying to do here. Now, for the server side, there are a few more steps. Right? Server side gives you a little bit more too. With the server side, you get that token that lasts for 60 minutes, but you can renew it. So you can submit moments when the user's not currently on your website. Right? Now, this is really cool if, let's say, I purchase something and I want to write a moment for when it's shipping. So the user's in their history and they see that this new product is coming to them. Well, the user's not going to be on the website at that time, so you will need to have done the server-side flow. And we think, in fact, for most cases, you want to do the server-side flow. And the flow looks like this. You're going to, once you hit that redirect URI, Google will call that redirect URI, you're going to get a code and a state via get params. Verify the state. This is the one that you made up that's unique and non-guessable. And then send that code to Google in exchange for credentials. Store those users' credentials, and then you're going to output a page that just calls one method, gappy.connect.complete. You're going to pass it the credentials, and it will close that redirect URI. Then when the user goes back to the original web page, it'll make sure that that callback gets called. Right? If you don't call gappy.connect.complete, then we don't know that the flow has been fully completed, and that callback may not be called. This is what it looks like in code. Step one is right up there at the top. We get the code and the state. And then step two, we're going to verify that the state is what we expect. And we're going to store the credentials under step 3 there. Oh, I'm sorry, 3 is exchanging the credentials. And then 4 is storing them. And then 5, we're just going to output that web page, passing it the credentials so it can put those into the gappy.connect.complete function. And this is what that that page looks like. You see we're calling gappy.connect.complete, and we're putting in there the ID token and the access token. All right, so that's the client side and the server side flow, at which point we're done. Next step, writing moments. Now, writing moments is all about getting the activity on the left there to be a moment on the right there in Google Plus history. So you can see, and as you saw in the demo earlier, this is a radio station, and we're writing that moment into Google Plus, and it becomes a moment there. And the flow looks a little bit like this, right? And there's 2 steps here. First, we write that moment. The next step is that Google is going to go out to that target URL, retrieve that page, and learn something about it. And what it learns, it's going to use to render that moment. And it's going to use to render the post if the user decides to share. Let's start with the write step. These are the different activity types, right? It's a pretty short list. This is what we're starting with. And one of the things that we definitely want feedback on is what are the activity types that are missing, that are essential to you and your website. And in fact, if you go to our documentation, we have an issue tracker where you can submit moment types. Now, each of these activities is going to be encapsulated in JSON. That's the payload that you're going to transmit in the RESTful request. And essentially, this is JSONified schema.org markup. Right? We're looking for a type, a target, and sometimes a result. Now, the type is the activity type that was taken. Right? This could be a comment, or it could be a listen activity, or it could be a buy activity. And that's just going to be a URL that identifies it. Next, the target. This is the item that was acted upon. So if I listen to something, this is the song. If I bought something, this is the product. Now, the result is any resulting data from that action. So if I made a comment, this is the comment. This includes the comment permalink, right, and the comment text. In code, it looks like this. Here's this is a listen activity. And in the JSON there, you'll see the type listen activity, and then you'll see a target URL, which is actually the link to this song. Really simple. The next one, comment activity. Now, there's a little bit more to this. We have the type at the top, it's a comment activity, and then we have the blog post that we commented on under target URL. This third section, result, is the comment that we wrote, right? It's of type comment. There's a URL to the permalink for the comment, and we have text. This is the text of the comment. All right, so that's step one, writing a moment to Google. Step two, fetching the target URL. And again, it's about this. It's about rendering the moment and rendering the post if the user shares. We get the image and the title and whatever else we can show in the moment to make it rich from schema.org markup on the page. Now, who is familiar with microdata markup? Great. Keep those hands up. Who is familiar with schema.org, like how it works? Right? It's the same set. That's what I'm trying to say. Lower your hands. Microdata markup is, schema.org is microdata markup. It's just the difference is the URL that defines the type and the different properties that are available. For these, we're looking for this. We're looking for a type, a name, a URL, a description, and any number of other properties as per each particular type. Now, some of these are going to be required and some of these are going to be recommended, and we have a full listing of that in our documentation. But in general, you should almost always include the type, the name, the description, and the image, right? Type is always going to be required. The name, the description, and image are what allow us, when a user just shares a URL in Google+, to render that snippet in the post. Right? And it's also good practice for your website. Remember, schema.org is markup for the web page that's been adopted by Yahoo, Bing, and Google. And it's the way that you get to tell these search engines what the item is on your web page. Right? Because there's more to a web page than just the page. And schema.org is how you add that intelligence into the markup. Now, if we want to take a look at this in an actual page, it's going to look like this. Right? This is just HTML with some added attributes. That's the microdata markup. Let me highlight them for you. The key takeaway from this slide is that you'll notice all of this data is encapsulated in the tags. So whether the page has the markup or doesn't have the markup, it looks the same to your user. And in fact, you don't have to add any content to your page to get this markup. Dollars to Donuts, you already have all the data there. You just need to tell us what each item is. So going through from the top, you'll see an item scope and an item type. Now those are going to be on the parent tag. Yeah? All the item props below that are going to be included in this item. Now the item type specifies what it is. Now in there you'll see item props. and each of those has a value that specifies what property that we're indicating here. Now, the property could be a description, an image, and you'll even notice we have a sub-item in here called in-album, right? Because schema.org is hierarchical. You can make an in-album of a music recording. And that's pretty much it. So again, to mark up your page, what you're going to want to do is look at schema.org markup and look at our activity pages to make sure that you're including at least the required fields, and I would recommend the recommended fields. And that's it. We've set up our application using the API console. We've authorized the user using OAuth 2. And then we've written moments. And by writing these moments into Google, we also give Google the target URL. Google goes out, finds out about that web page, and renders this moment for the user in a rich way in Google+. And it was using technologies that we're all familiar with, which is pretty cool, right? That's all there is to actually setting up Google+ history. But what it can do for your website and what we think it can do for users is so much more, right? This idea of the user being able to save all of their activity on the web privately into Google+, and then optionally share whatever they want to share with their friends, their family, or public. I think this ability is going to be really cool. Thank you. That's my favorite part. No, I'm kidding. So it's a really easy API to use. We have 2 additional sessions, an advanced where I go into some detail about each of these things, and we do some cool things with the button and the API. And we also have a code lab as well. And I've thrown a permalink up there to the Google+ session track. So if you want to check out those sessions and come, please follow that URL. Now, again, simple API, quick presentation, time for questions. Please ask me any questions that you may have. And if you want, and you're nice to me, I'll give you a sticker too.
Ooh.
What's that?
With the understanding this is a developer's preview.
Yes.
I noticed that one of the things that's common to all of the types is that they require a reference back to your website to fetch the snippet information.
Yeah.
Any possibility that that's going to be removed in the future for, again, using the comparison to instant uploads? When you instantly upload a photo, there's no reference back to a picture on some other website. So is there a way to just store content on Google's server?
It's a great question, and I actually think there's another question in there too for the use case of mobile, right? I mean, there's the image that you create, and most of the time if you have a website and you have an application, that image is going to exist somewhere. And in fact, for creating an image and it exists somewhere, you would use create activity, and you can link to that. However, if you're doing an activity that doesn't leave a trail on the internet, so you don't have a URI or a URL that we can go out and fetch in the created activity, we're working on a solution for just that problem.
Okay, great.
Yeah, so look for that during this developer preview. Yes?
I noticed that it adds a moment to their account, but then they have to manually go through and share that moment. Is there any plans for having people give the options for auto-sharing it in the future?
So I recommend that you play with the UI. I mean, there is a way to sort of make some of those moments visible on your Moments tab, right? And that's pretty interesting. But there is no way for something to be automatically shared to your circles when you make an activity somewhere else. And I think that's the key thing about history that I think is really cool, is that I want everything in one place just for me. But there's only a few things that I want to share with my friends and family. And almost always, for me personally, it's never consistent, right? Like when I book some travel and I take some photos, sometimes when I go on a trip, I want those photos to be shared. And sometimes I want to keep them just for myself. Or sometimes I want to keep them with just my family, right? There was no sort of consistent, I want this always to be shared with everybody. So that's what we're looking at with the Google+ history.
But there's no way that even within our own UI we can say, yes, I want to share this too. Kind of like how the +1 button, when you click the +1 button, it immediately gives you a share option, because it seems kind of disjointed to say, okay, if you wanted to actually share this, go log into Google+, go over to your Moments tab, then manually share it. It'd be nice if it could be done in one flow.
Yeah. So how would that look like in an API form, do you think?
My hope would be that I could pop up a share moment right there in my...
So you want to write the moment, and then you'd also want to share in your UI?
Yeah.
Okay. Please join us on the discussion forum and make sure that we hear that feedback. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good point. Joseph just said you can use the share integration on your site. We have a sharing link. So if you wanted to do it in Flow, you could still pop up this JavaScript window that allow the user to share directly to their stream. Thank you.
So the sign-in button you showed, is it possible to use it with more than one scope if you need it in any app? Because the parameter only said scope.
Yeah, it's space-separated scopes. Put
Okay.
in as many as you like.
Yeah, cool.
So you talked a lot about using it from a website, obviously. Is there stuff available like jars and things to use this from applications, like Android apps and things?
I'm glad you asked that question. Yes. Coming soon, you will have the ability to do this both from iOS and Android, and I'll talk about that a little bit more detail in the advanced session.
Great.
But also there's a session on your schedule about mobile specifically, where they're going to go into some depth with that. So please do come to that.
Great, thank you.
Is that all for questions? Nope.
Hey, Timothy.
Hey.
So I love microdata and I love activity streams, and I know that activity streams was used obviously for the history API, and I'm happy and I'm sad. I'm sad because there's basically an overlapping vocabulary that ends up being confusing for both of them. Is there an open forum where we can discuss how to consolidate the activity streams specification with schema.org?
Great. And are you talking specifically about the markup on the target URL?
I'm talking about
Or the JSON? that's
the
transmitted?
JSON and the microdata that I just saw.
Yeah. And, you know, I mean, at Google, we feel very strongly about open standards and implementing them wherever it makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And we did have this conversation, and we would love to have this conversation with you. A great place to start that would be with us after the session, if you want to talk in person, or on our discussion forum that's linked from the documentation.
Yeah, okay. So you guys are working with schema.org? Or are you guys schema.org? Because I never know who like, I'm
well,
like...
schema.org is an open standard that was adopted by all 3 major search engines and a number of other people.
Right.
And we do work closely with them, yes.
Okay, so you are sort of bringing the activity concepts to schema.org.
I'm sorry?
You are bringing the activity concepts to schema.org.
Oh, I see nods in the front here, so I guess that's a yes. But why don't you come up and we'll talk about this in more detail afterwards.
Okay,
Thank you. Yeah, this is a good point. I have Joseph and Paul. We have a number of engineers that have worked on the Google Plus history. So if you do have some very specific or technical questions, let's come up and have a little party. It looks like we're ending early, so we have some time. Oh, one more question. Thank you.
I just had a question if there was going to be any, in the future, the thought of allowing apps and people to read the user's moments and like get a listing of the moments, stuff like that.
So, I mean, we as a policy don't comment on future features or
yeah.
that kind of thing, but I definitely want to hear the feature request. So let's
Okay.
talk about that, and if you can, make sure to add it to the discussion forum so
Okay.
we have it in place. Thank you. All right, thank you so much for coming.